Eddie Gabor joins us right now, the Key Advisors Group co-owner. Eddie, if you think about it, no sooner did we get news of this FDA approval for the Pfizer vaccine than we heard more about mandates and maybe optimism that we're clearing some hurdles that had led to this post-pandemic bumpiness. What do you think of that? That it gets back to those who should get vaccinated, and maybe more now will?
Yeah, I think the bigger thing, too, is the fact this Delta variant has actually in itself caused more people to go out and get vaccinated. And the other thing is, and I agree with Charlie, the same data that I was following, it looks like in many states like Florida and California that those cases are starting to roll over. And I think that's why you've seen the cyclical trade kind of come back in the last couple of days. So you got the FDA approval, but you also have us hopefully being in the late innings of this. And if you look at the UK and other countries like India, after they saw that huge surge, there was a really big, steep drop-off. And our hope is if the data continues to trend its way, September could be in a scenario where we've got the Fed past us, and that's really good from an economic and market perspective. So we think we're in line for a very nice snapback trade in the areas that have been hit really hard.
Do you think the market more than reflects that, though? I mean, when you look at this, and it's been an incredible run, but every time we get beaten down, you're richly rewarded if you dive in and keep buying. And that has held true, this bull market, if you think about it, and even throughout the pandemic. Do you think that will remain the case here? We'll have our hiccups, our spikes that will get a sort of a concern, response, some selling, but then we're back to what we were doing.
So I think buy the dip continues to work this year like it has been. I'm very concerned about next year. So I think the biggest short-term risk is a misstep by the Fed this week or some geopolitical risks that are now on the table because of everything happening in Afghanistan. However, from a market standpoint, I think we finish higher than where we are now at the end of the year. Next year is the year that you need to, in my opinion, start really playing defense because the comps aren't going to be as strong when we look at the prior year. Plus, the consumer with inflation and lack of stimulus is not going to have the discretionary income they had this year. So next year, we're going to be looking at deceleration on GDP, and the Fed is going to be forced to tighten during a time period where growth is not as strong. So they put themselves in a tough spot. And that's why I think next year is going to be very challenging, at least in the first half for investors.
Very good point, Eddie. Great catching up with you. And Eddie's right to say, I mean, it's easy now when you make these layup comparisons when we were in stop versus now an economy that is doing anything but. When we get further along here, the comparisons aren't so generous.